Alright, let's get straight into it. Here are the best single-player story games you need to play in 2026. We're covering everything from weird masterpieces to AAA epics, and I've got opinions on every single one. If you don't agree, let's fight in the comments. Let's kick things off with a surprise entry. 007 First Light is the first major James Bond game in over a decade, and it's from IO Interactive, the studio behind the modern Hitman games. And man, did they deliver. You play as a 26-year-old James Bond, a Royal Navy aircrewman who gets recruited into MI6's Elite 00 program. This isn't the suave, perfectly polished Bond we know from the movies. He's younger, more reckless, and still learning how to turn his raw instinct into discipline. The game is played from a third-person perspective and blends stealth, gadgets, and hand-to-hand combat in a way that feels like Hitman meets Uncharted. You're not just shooting your way through levels, you're infiltrating parties, bluffing past guards, and using Q's gadgets to solve problems creatively. The campaign runs about 15 to 20 hours, and the story tackles modern anxieties about AI and surveillance in a way that feels surprisingly relevant. Patrick Gibson voices Bond, and he absolutely nails the role. The game launched recently to widespread acclaim, scoring an 89 on OpenCritic. Honestly, this is the best Bond game I've played since GoldenEye. It's a confident, stylish origin story that makes you feel like you're earning the right to become 007. And next up is Mixtape, and man, this one ended up being a complete surprise. It's from Beethoven and Dinosaur, the studio behind the BAFTA-winning The Artful Escape, and published by Annapurna Interactive. You play as Stacy Rockford, a teenager in a dreamy 1990s California town, spending what she believes is her last night with her best friends before she leaves for New York to chase her dream of becoming a music supervisor. The whole thing is structured around a mixtape she's curated, and each song triggers a stylized, playable vignette. One moment you're skateboarding to Devo, the next you're escaping a party in a shopping cart. It's got shades of Edgar Wright and John Hughes with an animation style that feels like Spider-Verse. The soundtrack is stacked with legends like the Smashing Pumpkins, Iggy Pop, and Joy Division. Critics have been raving about it. It's sitting at an 86 on Metacritic and an 87 on OpenCritic. Now, some players have grumbled that it's light on gameplay and short, but honestly, for a tightly paced 100% vibes-based experience, it's kind of perfect. It launched last May, and if you've got Game Pass, it's available day one. Pragmata is Capcom's first brand new IP in years, and honestly, it's been worth the wait. You play as Hugh Williams, an astronaut sent to investigate a lunar research facility that's gone completely silent. But when a moonquake hits and your team is wiped out, you're left stranded and surrounded by hostile robots. That's when you meet Diana, a mysterious android girl who can hack into the enemy AI and crack open their armor. The core hook is brilliant. You control Hugh in third person, shooting and dodging, while simultaneously solving snake-style hacking puzzles through Diana to weaken enemies. It's this frantic balancing act where you're dividing your attention between the fight and the puzzle, and it feels incredibly satisfying once it clicks. Critics have been praising the exquisite synergy between the shooting and hacking, and the relationship between Hugh and Diana is surprisingly heartfelt. The game launched last April for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and even the Nintendo Switch 2. And get this, it sold over 1 million copies in just 2 days and 2 million within 16 days. It's a focused, polished experience that knows exactly what it wants to be. Next up is a game that completely redefined what an indie title could achieve, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. This is Ninja Theory's dark fantasy masterpiece from 2017, and I'll never forget my first playthrough with headphones on, which the game practically demands. You step into the worn boots of Senua, a Celtic warrior who journeys into the Norse underworld of Helheim to save the soul of her dead lover. But this isn't your typical hack and slash. Ninja Theory worked closely with neuroscientists and mental health specialists to portray Senua's psychosis with staggering authenticity. The result is an experience where the voices you hear in her head aren't just ambience. They react to everything you do, guiding you, mocking you, and sometimes lying to you. The combat is brutal and raw, and while some critics found it repetitive, the tension it creates is undeniable. The binaural audio is so immersive that you'll find yourself looking over your shoulder. It won 5 BAFTA awards, including Best Performer for Melina Jurgen's incredible motion capture performance. The game runs about 7 to 9 hours, and it's one of those rare experiences that stays with you long after the credits roll. And last year it received a free PS5 upgrade with ray tracing and 120 frames per second support, making it the perfect time to experience this modern classic. Next up is a game that absolutely floored me. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the debut title from French studio Sandfall Interactive. It's a turn-based RPG set in a surreal Belle Epoque-inspired fantasy version of France, where every year a godlike being called the Paintress paints a number on a monolith, and everyone who's reached that age is erased from existence. The number has been counting down, and now it's 33. You control Gustav, a 32-year-old engineer with a mechanical arm who joins Expedition 33, a suicide mission of volunteers with exactly 1 year left to live. The voice cast is stacked, with Charlie Cox as Gustav, and the combat system is genuinely innovative, turn-based with real-time parry and dodge mechanics that keep you on your toes. It's gorgeous, it's heartbreaking, and the writing balances existential dread with moments of genuine humour. It swept the game, awards the 2025, and has sold over 8 million copies. But fair warning, the ending is controversial, with no good outcome, and the final boss can feel anticlimactic if you've over-leveled. Honestly, I still think about it weeks later. If there's one game that made me sit in silence and question everything I thought I knew about consciousness, it's SOMA. This is Frictional Games' 2015 sci-fi horror masterpiece, and it's nothing like their Amnesia series. You play as Simon Jarrett, a man who wakes up in 2104 inside an abandoned underwater research facility called Pathos 2, with no memory of how he got there. The horror here isn't about jump scares, it's about the terrifying implications of what it means to be human when machines have started to believe they're people. The game emphasizes stealth, exploration, and puzzle solving over combat. You can't fight the creatures, only evade them. Some players find the gameplay repetitive, calling it a glorified walking simulator, but honestly, the story more than makes up for it. Conceptually, it's one of the most interesting horror games ever made. It holds an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, with over 40,000 reviews. The game recently got a Nintendo Switch release last year with a free Switch 2 upgrade featuring improved resolution and faster loading times. That ending still haunts me. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach is Hideo Kojima's follow-up to his polarizing epic. And honestly, it's everything I wanted and more. This time, you're not just delivering packages across a ruined America, you're traversing an entirely new continent, and the stakes feel even more personal. You play as Sam Porter Bridges again, but there's a new threat. The UCA is militarizing the Chiral network, and you're essentially on the run with a ragtag crew that includes Fragile, a grown-up Lou, and newcomers like Tarman, a guitar-wielding samurai. The game leans even harder into the weirdness, with hallucinogenic puppet shows, surreal cutscenes, and a combat system that's more refined than the first one. You can actually parry enemies and engage in proper shootouts now. Some players found the lengthy cutscenes exhausting, and the game's runtime is reportedly around 60 hours if you go for everything, which is no joke. But if you love the first game's meditative vibe, this is a worthy sequel. The way Kojima weaves commentary on legacy, AI, and human connection together while still giving you this massive sandbox to explore, it's pure genius. And that ending, man, I sat there for a solid 10 minutes just processing it. Rise of the Tomb Raider is where Lara Croft truly becomes the Tomb Raider. Set about a year after the 2013 reboot, Lara is still haunted by what happened on Yamatai, and she's carrying that trauma into her father's unfinished work. He was searching for the divine source, an ancient relic said to grant immortality, and the scientific community dismissed him as a lunatic. Now Lara's determined to prove him right, and that obsession takes her to the frozen peaks of Siberia in search of the lost city of Kitezh. But she's not alone. Trinity, this shadowy paramilitary organization with pseudo-religious ambitions, is hunting for the same artifact. The gameplay feels like a massive step up from the first game. More refined combat, deeper crafting, and those challenge tombs are bigger and more rewarding than ever. Lara can climb trees, stalk prey from above, and use the environment in creative ways. Some players felt the story leaned too hard into daddy issues, and the pacing could be uneven, but honestly, watching Lara grow from a traumatized survivor into this confident, capable adventurer is what makes it work. She's not quite the cold badass of the old games yet. She's still carrying guilt, still wrestling with the cost of her choices, and that vulnerability makes her far more compelling. Okay, full disclosure, I've put way too many hours into this one. The Mass Effect Legendary Edition is the definitive way to experience BioWare's iconic sci-fi trilogy. You step into the boots of Commander Shepard, an elite soldier tasked with uniting the galaxy against the Reapers, an ancient race of machine starships threatening all organic life. Across 3 sprawling games, your choices carry over and shape the story's progression and ultimate outcome in ways that still feel unmatched. The characters you meet, Garrus, Tali, Liara, Mordin, Thane, aren't just party members. They become genuine friends. You laugh with them, mourn with them, and make decisions that affect entire civilizations. The first game got the most extensive upgrades, overhauled combat, smoother Mako controls, and dramatically reduced loading times. Some rough edges remain, like the clunky inventory system in Mass Effect 1, but the emotional weight of this trilogy is unparalleled. I played through all 3 games back-to-back for the Platinum Trophy, and I was genuinely sad when it was over, not because the ending was bad, but because leaving these characters felt like saying goodbye to old friends. Okay, this next one I fell in love with the second I saw the trailer. NieR Automata is Platinum Games' action RPG masterpiece, and it's one of those rare experiences where the gameplay and the story are working together to say something profound about existence. You step into the boots of 2B, an android soldier fighting in a proxy war between the remnants of humanity and an army of machines that have taken over Earth. The combat is classic Platinum, fast, fluid, and incredibly satisfying. But what makes this game truly special is how it uses its narrative structure. After you beat the game for the first time, you're not done. You're not even close. You have to play through again as 9S, seeing the same events from a completely different perspective, and then a third time where everything you thought you knew gets turned upside down. There are 26 endings total, and 5 of them are essential to understanding the full story. I wasn't a big fan of the combat at first. It just didn't click for me, but the more I played, the more it grew on me, and by the time I reached Ending E, I was completely wrecked in a way that felt earned. It's a game about finding meaning in a meaningless world, and honestly, I still think about how it ended. Next up is Disco Elysium, and man, this one ended up being the biggest surprise of my gaming life. You play as Harrier Du Bois, a detective from the Revachol Citizens Militia who wakes up in a trashed hotel room with absolutely no memory of who he is or what happened to him. And there's a murder case waiting for him. A hanged man behind the hostel, but honestly, that almost becomes secondary to the real investigation. Figuring out who you are. This isn't a traditional RPG. There's no combat system at all. Every conflict plays out through dialogue and skill checks, which are resolved with dice rolls. Your stats are split into 4 pillars: intellect, psyche, physique, and motorics, and the 24 skills representing different aspects of your personality will literally speak to you, influencing your decisions and arguing with each other. It's like having a full committee living inside your head. You're partnered with Lieutenant Kim Kitsuragi, who's this calm, stoic presence that perfectly balances out Harry's chaotic energy. And the writing? It's genuinely some of the best I've ever encountered in any medium. Funny, heartbreaking, and relentlessly clever. Some players find the pacing slow or the ending anticlimactic, and I get that criticism. But for me, Disco Elysium is the kind of game that makes you feel like you've actually lived in its world, and I still think about it constantly. Okay, this next one is an absolute monster of a game. Larian Studios took the beloved Dungeons & Dragons universe and crafted something that feels like the definitive fantasy RPG of our generation. You wake up on a Mind Flayer ship with a parasitic tadpole squirming behind your eye, and you've got maybe days before it transforms you into one of those tentacled horrors. That's the ticking clock that kicks off an epic journey across the Sword Coast, and I ended up spending over hundreds of hours on my first playthrough alone. The characters you meet along the way, The fierce Githyanki warrior Lyazel, the mysterious cleric Shadowheart, the vampire spawn Astarion become genuine friends, and the writing is so sharp that I actually cared about their personal struggles. The turn-based combat follows D&D 5th edition rules, and the sheer freedom of approach is staggering. It won Game of the Year at every major ceremony, and even years later, Larian is still dropping free content updates and officially approved mods for consoles. I'm just sitting here hoping we get a proper expansion someday, because this world is one I never want to leave. This next one I fell in love with the second I saw the first gameplay trailer. Alan Wake 2 is Remedy Entertainment's survival horror masterpiece, and it's easily one of the most creative games I've ever played. The story is told from two perspectives. You play as Saga Anderson, an FBI agent investigating ritualistic murders in a small Pacific Northwest town, and Alan Wake himself, the writer who's been trapped in a dark dimension called the Dark Place for 13 years. The way the two narratives weave together is genuinely brilliant. Saga's investigation is grounded and procedural, while Alan's sections are surreal and abstract, playing with light and shadow in ways that feel like a living nightmare. The combat revolves around using your flashlight to burn away darkness before you can actually damage enemies, and it creates this constant tension where you're always managing your battery and ammo. The atmosphere is thick with dread. The fog, the rain, the sudden shifts into the dark place, and the sound design is impeccable. Remedy also brought back that incredible live-action musical sequence with Herald of Darkness, which was such a wild, joyous moment in the middle of all that horror. The game did win multiple Game of the Year awards, and honestly, it deserved every single one. And finally, let me just say this up front. The game you can play today is a completely different beast from what anyone experienced at launch. Cyberpunk 2077 is CD Projekt Red's ambitious open-world RPG set in Night City, a sprawling, neon-soaked metropolis where corporate greed and street-level desperation collide. You play as V, a mercenary trying to make a name for yourself, and the story kicks off when a routine heist goes horribly wrong, leaving you with a biochip in your head that's slowly overwriting your consciousness with the engram of Johnny Silverhand, the iconic terrorist rocker boy played by Keanu Reeves. That relationship between V and Johnny is the emotional core of the entire experience, and Reeves absolutely nails the performance. Johnny is charismatic and infuriating in equal measure. Night City itself is one of the most detailed open worlds ever created, filled with stories waiting to be uncovered. The main story clocks in around 25 hours, but I took nearly 80 on my first playthrough because I kept getting distracted by side gigs and character quests. The Phantom Liberty expansion with Idris Elba is genuinely some of the best content CD Projekt Red has ever made. It's a spy thriller that rivals anything in the main game. I was honestly devastated by how it ended, and it's a testament to how far this game has come that I can genuinely call it one of my favourite RPGs. But that's all for this video. I know there are still lots of good story games out there, but I am running out of time here. So maybe I'll talk about it later in my next videos. So for now, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like, and if you're not yet subscribed, be sure to click the sub button right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.